A woman went missing a while ago around my region, so a while ago I watched a news broadcast on my local news channel. It was about a woman that went missing about 2 months ago. The circumstances of her disappearance were odd. She was staying in a family cabin in the woods, and she said she got in a shootout with 2 men, claiming she shot one in the face. She frantically called her friend and told her these things. The specific things she said in call is unknown. The police found bullet holes and other evidence that suggested there was a shootout, but they found no blood anywhere. Despite her saying she shot one in the face, her belongings were found on the roof and she's been missing ever since. My initial thought was that she had a run-in with the men in black. A link to the article. https://upnorthlive.com/news/local/sheriff. This is it for the searches in the woods for Adrian Quindle. https://upnorthlive.com/news/local/sheriff. This dash is dash a dash for dash the dash searches dash and dash the dash woods dash for dash Adrian dash Quintal. Anyone encountered shadow people who talk? I had a sleep paralysis incident where I saw a tall dark figure with long arms and neck standing in my doorway. I was frozen and struggling to move, simultaneously sitting up and being unable to sit up, screaming for my mother and having no sound. It moved toward me, gliding somewhat, but also walking. And it spoke in a calm, multi-toned voice, almost like 3 voices in unison, just saying, "It's alright, don't get up," moving closer each time until it was beside me. And then I just woke up in a cold sweat. Just now, was watching a documentary and no one mentioned it speaking. Tried looking it up and only found people seeing it and not speaking about it until I stumbled on this Reddit group, but then only one post. Has anyone else encountered a shadow figure like this that spoke? Caramel popcorn sent coming from others. Yeah, I'm as confused as you would be reading that title, but I really can't explain it any other way. I swear on my own grave that some folks smell just like caramel popcorn. Like, I'm talking an almost overbearing sticky sweet kind of scent. It's not unpleasant, but you can totally pick it the moment you notice it. Anyone have any clue/guidance what this could be? I'm totally flawed by any logic I can come up with. I should quickly add, some people have this scent yet others don't. You can smell it even though they're a good distance away from you. I don't want to think the stress of life is currently turning me mad, but I have no clue what it could be or what other sub to turn to, as it's not paranormal in a sense. Any advice would help yo. Clown doll in my ceiling talking to me. I vividly remember when I was younger having a clown doll talk to me from a hatch in our ceiling. It would speak to me every single night and it was very nice. We often had conversations about my day and he would listen to me vent about my frustrations. However, the rule was always the same. If I slept with my hands or feet outside the blanket, it would come down and take them from me. This terrified me, and to this day, I have trouble sleeping with my limbs out from the blanket. Has anyone else had anything similar happen to them? Why was this so specific? I should also mention that I moved around a lot at that age and it only ever happened in one house that I lived in, so I don't believe that it was a hallucination. Have you ever encountered an appearing, disappearing building, door, road, path, etc.? Hello Redditors. I would like to ask a broad question to the community. I have read a few such stories on Reddit before, where the protagonist encounters a mysteriously appearing or disappearing location, such as a building, door, road, path, bridge, arch, or something else. I would like to ask if any of you have had such an experience. Is this phenomenon actually existing? I have a theory that I want to check using your stories. Please add any details that you may have, such as if that location was eerily silent or quiet, or eerily gloomy, cold, humid, felt off in some way, if there was any missing time, if there were any malfunctions with electronic equipment, or if the experience felt like a dream and or hallucination. Only actual encounters please, no fictional stories. He sensed something was wrong. This happened to my dad back in the 1990s. He parked his car outside the CBD area to avoid mid-morning congestion. However, the parking lot was quite isolated and he had to walk through some empty city blocks. Halfway came 2 guys walking quickly towards him. He didn't look at them directly but sensed something was wrong. He kept his steady walking. One guy whispered something to the other and they came very close to him. Suddenly they sped up and left him behind. 5 minutes later 2 policemen came running towards my father. They stopped, described the 2 men and asked whether he had seen them. He replied yes and showed the direction they went. One policeman said, "You are very lucky. These guys had just robbed an M***writer taxi driver. My dad was a retired Army LT colonel and I believe his posture or something like that saved him. I figured out the worst thing you can say to a stranger because of what this guy said to me pre-COVID. I was walking down an alleyway from a punk show that was a little too intense for me. When I rounded the corner I made eye contact with a guy across the street who began to follow me. I was walking fast and he was keeping up pace, so I turned around ready to use my taser I literally always kept on me when I lived in the area, and he walks right up to me and in a childlike voice says, "I'm sorry for my crimes against women." And then just stands there staring at me. He was clearly on something, and as I walked away to a nearby bar he just watched me. I told the bouncer not to let him in and he said he actually just kicked him out. I keep hearing things from the garages behind my house. It's 3:40 a.m. and I keep hearing church bells ringing from behind my house. Who the hell is ringing the bells at 3 in the morning? I live in a small town in Scotland and I have about 3 old churches in my area. However, they sound louder than normal, like it's closer than the closest church I normally hear. Also random clapping. Like someone standing on the street clapping their hands. I even counted timing in between. Every 12 seconds a singular clap would be heard. I've got my bedroom window open cause it's kinda hot ATM. The claps are around midnight-ish. And the bells for the last few days are at 2 or 3 a.m. Last night it was 2, tonight it was 3:40, so it's not automated, plus my churches have real bells since they are pretty ancient. Any ideas? I keep seeing a skinwalker, not deer, in my backyard forest, but my girlfriend thinks it's an angel and #X200B. I was scrolling through YouTube a while ago when I found a video describing what a skinwalker was. https://youtube.b/fmicge3hfsvw https://youtube.be/fmcg3hfsvw, and it genuinely reminded me of a creature that I've witnessed in the forest behind my house. There's been a weird deer-like creature that crawls around the forest at night. I used to go camping out in that forest with my girlfriend, but would always see a white-looking diseased deer that would crawl around the forest, and now I am convinced it is a skinwalker or a not deer. Any alternative explanations? And #X200B. I've been asking in other subreddits for help, but nobody else has had an answer for me yet. It has white skin and I doubt it's an albino or anything. My girlfriend says they're angels in her native tongue. I was and still am never sure what it is. I saw a cartoon fairy flying around my room. I'll keep this short. Last week I was laying in bed struggling to sleep and I rolled over to face the other direction. I saw something about the size of a softball zooming around by the window, and when I focused on it I realized it was what appeared to be a cartoon fairy or pixie, complete with sparkles around it. I closed and opened my eyes a few times and it didn't go away, and finally I put my pillow over my head and it was gone. I didn't feel terror or anything, but my heart was beating very fast. I'm just so confused as to why it would be a cartoon like that and not a flesh and blood fairy, I guess? Any idea of what I might have seen? Edit, I want to really point out that I wasn't sleeping. My partner was snoring and I was annoyed and awake. Man exposed himself to me at a Sonics game when I was a kid. When I was a kid my mom used to take me and my siblings to Sonics games at the Key Arena. One game, I happened to turn and look behind me and to the right, basically kitty corner to my seat. At exactly my eye level, the man in that seat was rather excited, if you catch my drift. I knew this because he was exposing himself through the pant leg in his shorts. I was 9 or 10 at the time and didn't really understand what was going on. After seeing this I looked up at the guy and he looked me right in the eyes and smiled at me. It wasn't until years later that I thought back on this incident and realized the guy had sinister intentions. I'm glad I was in a crowded place and not at risk for being a victim of that sicko. Man outside my son's window. I don't know if this belongs here, sorry if not. I'm a single dad and my son, Nolan, is 13. Last summer, right after his birthday, something happened that neither of us forgot. It was about 3 a.m. when I heard him screaming. I started to run to his room, and we met in the hallway. He started sobbing and telling me someone was looking through his window, so he called the cops and I searched outside. I didn't find anyone. He told the cops everything, and they began to search. They found an older man hiding in a park near our house. It was pretty terrifying. Nolan wasn't okay and ended up sleeping with me that night. He'll often have nightmares of the man too. I hope he's rotting in prison. "Mom, why do you keep calling me?" When I was about 7 or 8, I would constantly hear my mom calling me by my name or sometimes the pet name she has for me. It would either be loud and clear, somewhere in the distance, or a whisper right next to me. It was weird because it would happen she was nowhere around, so like when I'm at school or outside playing with friends when she was at work or whatever. After some time it got really frustrating, as anyone can imagine, and so I told her about it and she told me the next time it happens I should pray. She was super religious at the time. Anyway, it happened again when I was walking home from school. I heard her call me and she was nowhere near me. She wasn't even home, and so I prayed. I never heard it again. My brother saw my uncle's ghost. So, my brother has Down syndrome and I think he is very in tune to the spiritual realm. Several times he's claimed my uncle has visited him in dreams, and he's also visited my husband in a dream. I very much believe he is seeing this, but it got really interesting a few weeks ago. We were with my aunt and grandma at Red Lobster, and this particular Red Lobster was right across the street from the graveyard where our uncle is buried. My brother looks out the window and says, "Alan is here," and he's waving at us. We all just froze. I have heard many stories of people with special needs being more spiritually aware, so anyway, it may not be much, but I didn't know where else to share. My childhood dreams link with a popular physics theory. As a kid, 3 to 5, I'd have quite a few fever dreams about hiding in my home, but no matter where I hid I was found by the seeker, who from what I remember had no face and floated. And there was no noise, just my heartbeat. These dreams have always stuck with me as they were quite disturbing, especially for my age. But recently I found out about the fourth dimension theory and how any beings which live in a fourth dimension could theoretically see you from anywhere, no matter where you are. I immediately linked this to my weird dreams and how the faceless seeker always found me no matter where I hid, almost as if he could see me every time. And what is even more creepy is that it's commonly thought that if there were fourth dimensional beings that existed, they would lack of facial features and float, just like my dreams. My first prayer to St. Anthony, one of my family members had their phone taken by an acquaintance. Why denied vehemently, even though another friend saw it in Wisebag. We had to get the police involved. With the eyewitness, still couldn't get their phone back. At this point we lost all hope, thinking why probably threw the phone away to destroy evidence. When we came home I prayed to St. Anthony, for the first time, to please have the phone returned intact, no deleted stuff, etc. 3 days later, lo and behold, I came to the house and returned the phone with a lousy excuse. Some kids found it in a bush and handed it to me. Right? Why would they hand it to you? Nothing was deleted. It was, per my prayer, intact. For it felt like a miracle. Older men want to babysit. This was years ago. I was in my 20s and a single mom. I was waiting tables and these two older guys came in for lunch with a little girl. She was extremely well behaved and I complimented them on that. It led to conversation that her mom worked at nearby stables, and these kind gentlemen, since she was a single mom, would help her out taking care of her little girl, and they were very insistent that I, as a single mom, needed a break too, and that I should make sure I called them to watch my young daughter. They wrote down their phone numbers and kept repeating that I should call them to watch my daughter. My heart sank for that little girl, and her dumbass mother. No offense to older men, but I don't know too many normal ones that want to spend time with small girls. Please be aware of your surroundings. I'm a 20-year-old female and I run every day at sundown. My boyfriend has recently started joining me. Today, he got a bit ahead of me. I had noticed this Jeep passing a couple of times but thought nothing of it as we live in a college student-populated apartment complex. Figured dude was lost. The Jeep passed a third time, raising my suspicion. As we're turning into our apartment complex, he and I got to goofing off and he runs ahead. The guy in the Jeep pulls into the complex and up next to me. Now please understand, I'm a 5 feet 3 inches Hispanic/white woman in a crop top and shorts. I'm an easy target. He starts a conversation with me, cutting his sentence off and driving off as he notices my boyfriend walking towards us from our apartment. We're going running again tomorrow. I'll keep you updated. Please read everything. Don't assume. Pic is a drawing of what me and my friend seen. IDK, how to explain this? Me and my friend haven't been feeling well and we tried doing some rituals for protection and the feeling went away. But then today this thing just kinda showed up and we looked it dead in the face. It looks like the drawing my friend drew for a reference. It just stood there and stared with that weird smile. It was tall, I'd say around 6-ish crouching. I heard something hiss at me and it came with the most disturbing feeling I've ever felt. It stood a decent distance away from us but close enough to see, and it didn't disappear till both of us were together. It can understand us and I'm genuinely freaking out. It was in the kitchen, but when I said I had to use the bathroom it stood right outside of the bathroom. Please serious comments only. Question: unexplainable scenes you feel you shouldn't have seen. I don't know if this is the right place to post this, let me know if there's anywhere better, or threads like this already up, sorry if it doesn't fit. And hashtag X200B. Have you ever experienced or witnessed any strange scenes you felt weren't for your eyes? I'm not speaking about walking in on your primary school teacher's *gagging, I mean anything cultish or unexplainable, strange gatherings of your neighbors, windows you peeked in as a kid to see something you shouldn't have, odd motel characters or suspected covens? Even odd animals or very odd people, unexplainable parties, possible body disposals, alien-like people, etc. And hashtag X200B. Just so curious as to the strange scenes or suspicious characters people may have witnessed, feel free to link any other threads/posts you've seen, any contribution is brilliant. Thanks. Smiley face. Recently discovered that my sister and I had the same encounter in childhood. My sister, 24, and I, 23, were talking the other day about our childhood. We went through some bad experiences. She proceeds to tell me how she sometimes used to see our grandma at night whenever she was scared/sad, who was comforting her, and I was shocked because I experienced exactly that as well. Whenever I was scared at night, I'd feel her sitting on my bed, smiling and comforting me. The crazy part is that this grandma died before either of us were born. I was like 5 to 6 years old when these would happen, and I never once questioned it or were scared. I was very at peace when I felt her. But it's kinda crazy to discover that my sister had the same experience and we'd never mentioned to each other until now. Makes me doubt my current beliefs. Remember those fake ghost scanner apps you would download when you were bored even though you knew they were fake? I just found this sub and wanted to share a story that I had when I was a kid. One day, I was very bored, so I just started downloading some random apps, and for whatever reason, decided to download a ghost scanner. I knew it was fake, but I wanted to see if I could get some funny replies out of the ghosts. Well, I started to notice that it has been a bit since a ghost has appeared, so I turn around towards my TV, and my phone says it has picked up a ghost, directly on top of my TV. My TV then proceeds to turn on, even though I was nowhere near the remote. Also, it is an older TV, so it couldn't have been controlled by someone through their phone. I see no explanations other than that ghost. Ring around the rosy. Update: my son asked me, "Mom, why does the little boy always stare at me like that while I fall asleep?" I want to preface this by saying I've lived in the same house for 2 years and haven't had any other unexplainable events happen. Tonight I was running the water for my son's bath. I got my son into the bath, and before I turned off the water, my son said to me, "I hear someone singing," and all of a sudden I heard a young child singing "Ring Around the Rosie." It freaked me out, so I immediately turned the water off to get him out. As soon as I turned the water off, we heard a child giggling and then complete silence. It's 8:30 p.m. and I'm now terrified to go to sleep. Robert Johnson, who sold his soul to the devil, story below. According to legend, as a young man living on a plantation in rural Mississippi, Johnson had a tremendous desire to become a great blues musician. After talking with an old withered man, Johnson was instructed to take his guitar to a crossroad near Dockery Plantation at midnight. There he was met by a large black man, the devil, who took the guitar and tuned it. The devil played a few songs and then returned the guitar to Johnson, giving him mastery of the instrument. In exchange for his soul, Johnson was able to create the blues for which he became famous. After gaining the fame and fortune he so desired, Robert Johnson would die only a few years later of mysterious circumstances at age 27. He is one of many musicians and celebrities to die at this age and will forever be part of the 27 Club. Rule of threes: the average human being can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours in extreme heat or cold, 3 days without drinkable water, and 3 weeks without food. These rules are worth taking to heart. I know for a fact they're true. As long as you don't break them, you'd be amazed how long you can keep a person alive, bringing them back from the brink just before they succumb to the death they plead you for every day. But I have one more rule to add. If you're careful to make sure you don't leave fingerprints, choose your victims wisely, and maintain the outward appearance of a quiet but polite neighbor with a steady job and a well-kept home, you can live at least 3 decades without anyone suspecting a thing. Saint Candle has been moving by itself for years in search of some wisdom here. I was born and raised Roman Catholic and have a small shrine where I keep all of my saint candles. I set them up to be a straight line side by side together. For over 4 years, my St. Judas Thaddeus candle, patron saint of hopeless causes, the second candle from the right, gradually inches forward and slightly turns to face my bed every day. I always move it back into place, but no matter what I wake up the following day and the candle is creeped forward. It doesn't matter what spot the candle is in either. I could put it in any spot and it will move on its own regardless. What could this mean? Is something trying to communicate with me? Open to all insight and whatnot. Same UFO 3 nights in a row this week, so I'm in southeastern PA and I've seen the same UFO 3 nights in a row this past week. One of the nights I wasn't at my home where I saw it the other 2 nights. It was an orange orb, flying a lot lower than a plane, going decently fast, pretty big. The first night it literally vanished right before my eyes. The other 2 sightings it went behind trees, so I lost visuals. What's interesting is the night I saw it away from home, 2 other people saw it across town. They were my friends and they texted me freaking out because we have all been following the stories in the news lately. I asked them what it looked like before I told them I had seen it too, and it was the same thing. Has anyone else had any sightings this week in the northeastern US? Saw the dead so clearly I was driving home from a road trip. A very windy day on the highway. The type of wind that knocks over trees, so we decided to take an alternate route off the main highway. The next day at work I see my client by the front desk. I don't get a chance to speak to him, so I decided to call shortly after to schedule our next meeting. His wife picks up and informs me that I couldn't have seen him as he died in a car accident the previous day. The same highway I avoided. She was happy I called as she was hysterical trying to figure out how to move forward with the finances. I think he visited me as he knew his wife needed that financial planning phone call at that moment. I saw him clearly as I see any other living person. He didn't speak, just glanced over at me. Scared shitless, I work as a merchandiser and one of my stores happens to be in a very high crime area. After work, I always get into my car and immediately hit the lock button while I'm sorting myself for my next drive. I am so glad that I do this. Tonight I entered my car, instinctively locked the doors, and grabbed my phone to put my next job site address in. Not 5 seconds after I got in, a disheveled man aggressively ran up to my passenger side and started forcefully yanking on the handle trying to get in. I turned the engine on and got the hell out of there so fast. As I was driving off, he was screaming something at the top of his lungs. I'm not sure what that was all about, but I definitely dodged a bullet tonight. That was frightening. Scary female. When I was 17, many years ago, I was on my way to Halloween. It was pouring rain, cool outside. I saw a girl who looked around my age hitchhiking and stopped to pick her up. I lived outside a very small town at the time, and possible danger never crossed my mind. She was kind of quiet during the 45-minute drive, so we listened to music. When we got to town, she had me pull over at a gas station. She pulled this huge freaking knife from her backpack, laid it on her thigh and said, "I will never forget this. I was going to K*LLU and take your car, but you're a sweet kid. Don't ever pick up hitchhikers." Then she got out of the car and walked away. I had never been so shocked and terrified in my entire life. And I've not picked up another hitchhiker either. Seeing into an opening in thin air that showed another reality. One time I was at a group meeting and something weird happened to the speaker. As she was standing there talking in the center of the circle, it was like a sliver of time-space opened up and showed a completely different outfit than what she was really wearing. It looked like there was sliced through thin air starting from her belly button, curving over to her hip and down her knee. Through that slit, she had a houndstooth pattern skirt on instead of brown slacks. Maybe that was what she was wearing in an alternate universe instead? It only lasted for a few seconds and I almost didn't even take conscious note of it. I wonder why that happened or why I was able to see that. Too bad I didn't ask anyone around me if they saw it too. Something bought me a coffee happened a few years ago. I was hard up for money and struggling to buy groceries. One item I couldn't get was coffee, only coffee drinker in the house, so wasn't a top priority. I go to work and start getting a headache due to no caffeine. I went to the cafeteria to see if I had enough change in my lunch bag for a cup from the vending machine. I didn't and was short a quarter. As I'm standing there thinking about how pathetic I am when I hear the distinct sound of change dropping into the return tray of the vending machine. I check and sure enough it's a quarter. I'm sure there's an explanation, but I didn't touch this machine and was standing there for 10 seconds pouting before it dropped. Makes me wonder. Something odd in West Virginia. About 2 years ago, my friends and I took a trip to West Virginia for my best friend's birthday. She loves the legends of Mothman. We wanted to go and visit the TNT area that he was supposedly sighted in. Well, we were all bumbling idiots and hiking through the woods / a construction site. No, we didn't find Mothman. However, my girlfriend and I looked up as we were lagging behind the group, keeping watch. ISWTG, I was looking up and saw a monkey. The stereotypical kind with the curled tail and about the size of a watermelon. I thought I was seeing things, but my girlfriend saw it too. I looked at her in shock. And she looked back at me like, did we really just see that? I thought it was a bit strange, but it could have just been someone's pet who was released. Son talks about being reborn. Last night I was laying in bed with my son watching a movie, Twister, and he suddenly said, I was 18 once but then I was reborn and now I'm 8. I wanted him to elaborate more, so I asked him what his life was like before, and he said, I was black then but was ugly and wanted to be white, then very excitedly said, I got my wish. I told him that I doubted very much that he was ugly, and he just shrugged and started talking about something else. What he said made me so sad. This was not the first time that he has mentioned something about his life before he was with me, but it is the first time he has gone into any kind of detail. Strange coincidence, a few weeks ago, my husband and I were talking about how one shouldn't whistle at night because of indigenous people's folklore, particularly in North America. I love the paranormal and supernatural, so I enjoy listening to those type of stories via podcasts, Reddit, etc. I'm not Native American, Asian American, but I appreciate the culture and history. Today we went hiking and I brought it up again. It was the afternoon. I asked if it was all right to use an emergency whistle. My husband didn't see anything wrong with that. I was being serious and genuinely curious about what would happen if someone used one. We went to the mall afterwards and decided to go inside the Barnes & Noble because we're both bookworms. Guess what was one of the books I first saw? I've attached a photo. That wasn't my coworker. This happened a few weeks ago while I was at work. I was at my office making myself a morning cup of cafe mocha in the kitchen. A lady I worked with walked by me. I saw her face, and I greeted her with a good morning, and it was rather loud. She kept walking and went out the door. I took it that she either didn't hear me, was in slow motion brain, or she was having a bad morning. Well, as it turns out, she had never been in the office. In fact, she was working from home at the bottom of the mountain. It takes 30 minutes to drive up the range, and she'd never left her house. An Aboriginal coworker told me I had just experienced a Quincan, a type of doppelganger from the Dreamtime. The Dancing Pedophile Update, original post. https://www.reddit.com/r/creepy-encounters/comment/ln74sl/the_dancing_UTM_medium=sign android_app_ampersand UTM_score source=sign share. I went to the parental pad today and found a pamphlet with Aiden's full name. I looked him up, and as of 2019 he is in prison. I don't know how long his sentence is. Honestly, it was harder to do than I thought it was going to be. After I saw his headshot in the company program, it brought back a lot and made me real funky. I really didn't want to deep dive. I'm glad he's caught and exposed. Edit, for those wondering about the teacher, I found him and he's not locked up, but I'd no longer a dance teacher. He does have a couple of children of his own now. I hope he protects them. And you wondering why I'm using he/him for the teacher now is because he is FTM. The death cactus. My mom has a cactus on her kitchen windowsill that she calls the Christmas cactus, because it only blooms in December around Christmas. However, when my grandmother died 2 summers ago, it randomly bloomed that day, despite not being due for another 6 months. It then never bloomed after that. 2 Christmases went by and still no flowers. Nothing at all. 2 days ago, our family dog died. It was very sudden and unexpected, and my parents, sister and I are all devastated. After my parents got home from having her euthanized, there sat on the windowsill was the bloomed cactus. It had not bloomed the night before. I find it so strange that it randomly bloomed on the 2 days my loved ones had died, especially as it had not bloomed in the 2 years between. Now my mom is terrified of it blooming again. The good boy I knew something was wrong the second I awoke to the sound of my dog scratching and whimpering outside my bedroom door. "Rocky?" I called, unsure if I was dreaming. He persisted and I recognized his distress. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but a sense of foreboding drove me to check on my kids. I cracked the door and peered inside. A figure leered over my sleeping daughter. I threw open the door. The figure took one look at me, then dove through the open window, disappearing into the night. The police found him soon after, linking him to multiple child disappearances in the state. My wife said we were lucky I got up when I did. I couldn't decide whether or not to tell her the truth as I looked out the window into our backyard at the small gravestone marked Rocky. "The offering, I wish it's a girl," he whispered desperately. "With you on your maternity leave, Beth alone can't help us survive for long," he added. It all started 3 years ago. The world had since adapted the system of matriarchy. The matriarch would take charge of the family and help it survive against them. She would retire at the age of 50 and would be superseded by the next matriarch. Failure to produce the next matriarch would result in the entire family being led by them. It was a unique system. It changed it all. From the far leftists of the north to the far rightists of the Middle East, they all wanted a girl in the family. The race to win didn't exist anymore, it was the race to survive. Beth placed the blood jar outside the door for the vampires to collect, since it was that time of month again. The woman who ruined my life, I watch her leave for work, walking to the car. I watch her walk into the office. I watch her on her lunch break. I watch her going home. Having dinner, doing the dishes, sitting on the couch in an empty house. I watch her tapping on her phone, the TV in the background playing for no one. I watch her get ready for bed. Undressing, taking a shower. Every day, I watch the woman who ruined my life. Waiting. Hoping. Wishing I could do something, anything, to stop her. I watch her walk over to the mirror. She catches her reflection. Remembers I'm watching. She looks back at me and smiles, knowing there's nothing I can do to stop her. Knowing I don't have any control over this body anymore. There is a good room in my house. When we first moved into our home, we laughed at what we called the goth kid room. The walls were painted pink with a purple ceiling. I never really paid much attention to it at first until I started noticing how peaceful it was in there. Whenever I was in the depths of my depression, I'd just lay on the ground in this empty room and I'd always feel better. If my kid was crying, I'd always take them there to play and they would snap out of it almost instantly. It's funny, but it's almost as if it's the opposite of haunted, or maybe it is haunted, but in a good way. I practice magic and meditation in there now due to the good energy. I feel as though it is somehow protected. I was wondering if anyone else had good places in their homes. There was this creepy guy at a bar years ago. My roommate and I were getting drinks at our usual place. We sat at the bar sharing a pitcher and some shots, and this creepy guy we had never seen before kept butting into our conversation. He kept trying to buy us drinks and talk to us. He was really drunk and very pushy. We were there for a couple hours and it went on the whole time. We ended up leaving early because he kept saying we should come over to his house, and when we declined he got weird and started talking to himself. Fast forward 2 weeks later and this guy is on the news, wanted by the police. He had met a girl at a bar, she left with him and he righted her out in a cornfield. They'll remember me, they'll remember me. They'll remember all the insults, all the taunts. They'll remember the ugly girl who no one would ever want to be near. They'll remember pushing my face into the mud. They'll remember kicking me and hitting me. They'll remember turning everyone against me. They'll remember I was always alone. They'll remember nobody helping me when I asked, when I pleaded. They'll remember when I decided I didn't want it to happen anymore. They'll remember the day when I walked into school for the last time. They'll remember making eye contact with me. They'll remember when I fired the first bullet. They'll remember when the screaming started. They'll remember being scared of me. They'll remember I could have led them. They'll remember I chose to leave them paralyzed instead. They'll remember my mercy. They'll remember me. This story will not scare you. This story will not scare you. You can search for meaning all you want. Try to translate. Read the same sentence over and over. Read the same sentence over and over. However, no matter what you do, I am sure you will not be frightened by this story. You do not frighten easily, I'm sure. You are, after all, on this subreddit looking for a scare. Why did you click on this story? Only to prove me right? Human lives are short, maybe even shorter than you think. Why are you reading this? There are much scarier things you could be reading. Tales of ghosts, ghouls, murderers, and kidnappers. Go read about those, or perhaps even experience them in real life. I promise you, no matter how long you read for, this story will not scare you. That's not its purpose. It is only a distraction from the thing right behind you. TIFU by asking my 3-year-old where he was before he was born. I was reading some super old paranormal posts the other day and found one of the ones about children with memories. I thought, Matt, what could go wrong? Well, this is what he told me. I had guns in my mouth, and Daddy had to take them out, but the guns were in my mouth because my legs were hurt. I made a big mess and Pa had to clean it all up. What? The F***CK. He never uses the word Pa ever. When he said this, it reminded me of some pictures we took while in Gettysburg a couple years ago, and he had an aura in several of them. I'm just assuming that the aura was something weird with the camera lighting and that the answer to the question was just random kid jabbering. Despite being so super creepy. Edit, here is the series of pics from Gettysburg. http://imager.com/gallery/IWEGHX. Trees I planted 18 years ago felt happy to see me last time I went and visited them, so when I was about 5 years old I planted about 500 to 600 pine trees on some land our family owns with my grandpa. Grandpa died a couple years later and no one ever went back until recently when I decided I wanted to go camp W some friends. As soon as I got there I was amazed at how tall they were, at least 30 to 40 feet, and I just couldn't shake the feeling the whole little forest I planted was happy to see me. The whole time I was there it felt insanely positive and I just kept getting the happy vibes from the trees. What do y'all think some explanations could be? I was thinking maybe either nature spirits or residual energy mixed W my own emotions. Let me know what you think. Trick or treating was cancelled last year. My daughter, Emily, was devastated. She loves Halloween. She spends the entire year leading up to it planning her costume, so it's perfect. I would have done anything to make sure my baby could go out and enjoy Halloween to the fullest, but in September and October, 12 children had gone missing from our town. 2 of them were Emily's school friends. I was the one who broke the news to her, so I fully expected she'd be angry at me. Instead, she blamed her father. "This is all Daddy's fault." She sobbed, and then refused to speak to him for days. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. Months later, when my husband was being led away in handcuffs and the shed in our backyard was swarming with police officers, my daughter got up on her tiptoes to whisper in my ear. "I told you it was all Daddy's fault." TV remote decided to return to our universe. My wife and I lost our TV remote about 2 weeks ago. Went through the whole process of taking every pillow off the couch, flipping it, etc. It was absolutely nowhere to be found. Ended up moving the Roku from the basement TV upstairs and just used that for the time being. This past Friday, we are both sitting on the couch watching the new Bo Burnham special. I set my hand down on the ottoman and feel something plastic. I pick it up and am about to adjust the volume when it hits me. Holy F***CK. Where did it come from? It was just casually sitting there. Right in front of us. It took us a few moments for the reality to set in, but the remote literally just appeared back out of thin air. I have no logical explanation for this. Update: do I keep hearing music? I need to know what the F***ck is going on. I know what the F***ck is going on. Well, https://www.reddit.com/r/the trueT-shirt/comment/538xjzz/I_keep_know_what_the_fuck. It turns out it was not all in my head. It wasn't about being tired or any other thing that might cause a hallucination. I was really hearing this music, and I still do some nights. I figured out what it is though, and I thought this sub might enjoy a resolution. It's the Archdiocese. There is one very close to my home. I can almost see it out my window. And they have a bell tower, modern one with glass encasing if you want to try to picture it. The tower is not properly sealed, so when it gets very windy the bells ring. And this is what I've been hearing. I figured it out because I was driving home during a storm once and heard the bells as I drove past them on my way home.